Hello, so my name's Michael Conneely, and this is part 5 of my July Astrology and Healing newsletter, and it focuses on the Venus-Mars-Lilith energy boiling pot that is in the transiting heavens and being hit by the very different energies from Saturn and Uranus at this time. It really is well worth being aware of this. So all of us need to understand the boiling pot of huge energies that are created by the Venus-Mars-Lilith conjunction at the start of July, plus the huge inputs from disciplinarian Saturn and revolutionary Uranus at the same time into the boiling pot. It could be said to be mind-bending. It could feel messy or weakening or diverting, but actually it can be understood. It can be managed for your successful, happy life journey through July. So let's start by looking at the centre of this, the extraordinary boiling pot of Lilith, Mars and Venus. So on the 1st of July, Lilith is at 25 Vedic Cancer, conjunct Venus at 26 Vedic Cancer. Venus entered Leo on the 7th and goes retrograde on the 24th, and is conjunct Mars at 0 degrees Leo now. And Venus and Mars are in close conjunction until July the 10th. But I want to say, having presented the boiling pot of Lilith, Venus and Mars, all at the Cancer-Leo transition point, that it is so lovely that from the 1st of July, Mars has gone into a fire sign. We've got Leo Mars, fire sign Mars, after his water sign, water-drenched transit in Cancer. Although we'll have to wait a few days while he gets out of the Gandanta zone at the beginning of Mars for him to actually become the full Mars in Leo action man, who will help us so much if we can understand him and manage him right. So we've got the arising of Mars in Leo action man. But the challenge that we have to be aware of and manage is that Venus and Mars aren't an easy energy. They're actually a steamy, desirous, fraught energy that is more about fraught passions than loving relationship. And then, of course, there's the question of what does the third item in the boiling pot, what does Lilith add to the Venus-Mars mix? How do we manage from that? And how on earth do we benefit from it? Okay, well, Lilith is our shadow side, our unconscious material. And it includes vast and super powerful fraught energies that were denied and stuffed down into our shadow. You know, because our parents, teachers, or this society couldn't allow them, or they were unfortunate and had to be denied. And in that shadow includes what guilt and socially unacceptable things were stuffed down into our shadow. And that's affecting the Venus-Mars combination. But Lilith isn't just the shadow. Lilith, above all, is also our wild side. Knowledge of our wild side was often denied or forbidden. But we all actually need to know what our wild side is if we're to come into the fullness of ourself, if we are to achieve to be free and authentic, as we each need to be. But of course we need to express our life side ethically. So I think you can see from this description so far, there's a lot of frustrated energies around that could make us irritable or angry or confused and could be destructive of love and relationship. And above all, also could divert Mars in Leo Action Man or mess up Mars in Leo Action Man from the start of July. So you see Lilith in Cancer. What's the energy like? Well, very briefly, I feel it's like the fiercely possessive mama. Possessive, triggered, but protective. And the fiercely possessive mama is controlling Mars and Venus. You see, Lilith conjunct Mars is the angry demand for freedom, rage triggered by suppression, striking out on your own path. It's a valid energy, but it can't just be turned into destruction. It has to be spiritually understood and managed. And Lilith conjunct Venus is a sort of constant anti-subservience campaign in relationship with an intense relationship demand. So what I'm trying to say is it would be so helpful if we can each well understand the core issue of the boiling pot that each of us will be affected by in July. And then we bring in awareness of what Saturn opposite that boiling pot will do and Uranus square that boiling pot will do. So I would say our task at the moment is to be aware that the energies of July will feel weird and driven, confusing. And so we'll need to be very focused, manage our mind and emotions, and deal with our bodily held and psychologically held wounds and residues. And as I said, I'm using overtone chanting and drumming indeed, because that's the sort of thing that helps my body and mind, sound healing. Not the only thing, but it seems very good at this time. Secondly, I'd suggest prioritising loving relationship if you're in one by handling any incidents with sharing that's been agreed beforehand. Tenderness and vulnerability are the key. Take loving steps to relate and share and discuss in this roiling time. Discuss in a loving way, which will counter the destructive dimensions of the boiling pot. And thirdly, I'd say our task is to value and support the properly expressed Mars in Leo hero guy. But there's four more energy inputs we just need to be aware of, because they will affect our minds and our behaviour. And it's mind-bending, but it is manageable to understand. So the first is that Saturn is opposite Lilith, Mars, Venus. Saturn is Lord of Karma. Now the Mars-Saturn combination is great frustration and anger. It's initiative versus blocks. So it's important to cultivate awareness, cultivate patience, not let frustration and anger overflow into the way you treat your partner. Okay, that's Saturn opposite Mars. But at the same time, very different from Saturn, Lord of Karma, is revolutionary Uranus squaring Mars, Venus and Lilith. That means we can't ignore it. We do have to find and manifest correct revolution in our mind, in our life, and harmonise that with Saturn's demand for karmic responsibility and structure and patience and diligence, not just rah-rah-rah revolution. It has to be implemented in Saturnian ways. And it's all to do with the Venus-Mars-Lilith energy. I just mentioned that Rahu, the North Node, is casting an aspect on Mars, especially from July the 5th to the 18th. And that will assist Mars, but could make Mars far too sort of scattered and driven and obsessive. So watch that. And, you know, I know this is complicated, but it's possible to take it in, and there's a blog to go with the video where you can read it over. Venus, Mars and Lilith are in the Gandanta zone. Gandanta zones are transition from water sign to fire sign. So in this case, from Cancer to Leo. And basically, what happens is that water dissolves and dissolves away as the Gandanta 0 point is approached, until this world is in some ways seen to be immaterial. And that can open us to the God realm or divine awareness or nirvana. And then, as we pass that 0 point, we see across the emptiness the first flicker of fire. We're transitioning from Cancer to Leo. And so Gandanta zone energies are big from the last 2 degrees of a water sign, the first 2 degrees of the following fire sign, and especially at the 0 point. And if we're not aware, you know, that Venus and Mars are going through Gandanta at this time, we could get so confused and messed up. Take it steady. Develop spiritual awareness. Manage your emotions and what you do. So, obviously, people with planets in signs, Cancer, Leo, Aquarius and Aries need to be super careful, but also if they have planets in signs ruled by Venus or Mars. So Taurus and Leo, Aries and Scorpio as well. It's a really big arena, but we could do so well if we can understand the bits of the chessboard and manage the chess game beautifully. And above all, this could have impact on loving relationships because of Venus-Mars, because of Ketu transiting the relationship sign of Libra now. So remember, tenderness and vulnerability are the key words. Okay, let's go on a bit now to look at the Mars in Leo hero guy. So Mars passes out of the Gandanta and we'll all be experiencing a new dimension, so different from the long-running, messy, tedious Mars in Cancer energy that we've all been experiencing. The new Mars in Leo guy has self-esteem and motivation, and he will feel good. Connect to him. But we must be aware throughout, also, of course, that there's all these problematic energies eddying around. So, I invite you to make a commitment now to harness Mars in Leo energy now. Treasure that. Mars transits Leo from June the 30th to August the 18th. This period will be so good for each of us to connect to our warrior self. Visualize that, connect to it, express it. Get work done, be decisive, be dynamic. Although, of course, you have to watch out it doesn't get over dramatic, too imperious, or too action-packed. How do you handle Saturn opposite Mars? Well, Saturn is discipline, responsibility, hard work. Mars is action man. I think you can see how the two can go together if they're guided by awareness of the two components and directed towards needed material and spiritual goals identified now. How do you handle Uranus square Mars? Well, both Mars and Uranus are initiative and needed newness. We have to manage, of course, that revolution urge towards initiative and newness with awareness and practicality, but we mustn't neglect it. And at the same time, of course, Saturn in Aquarius can bring in needed structure, responsibility and discipline. Be aware, by the way, that Mars and Uranus can bring irritability and anxiety or difficult incidents. And also be aware that Saturn's impact on Venus can be negative, can lay a cold hand, can produce lack of loving initiative. So it's needful to be aware of that. And also be aware with Uranus square Venus that Uranus-Venus energy is impatient for quick fix. It's good at gadgets and technology, but it can be too impatient about love. It doesn't nurture love in a steady way. So really try and be aware of the bits of the jigsaw and put yourself in the middle of the pieces in the way you want to be, going forward in the direction you want to move to. And I'd be so glad to give you a reading to assist in this and to look at your whole sort of destiny and personality and, you know, where your unfoldment of your life is at this moment. I always combine Western psychodynamic and also Vedic astrology, so you get a very wonderful offering. Okay, thank you.